One thing many of us forget is that your stories are as good as the journey of your characters, because they are about your characters essentially. But what exactly makes a character's journey interesting? Do you have uncles or aunts who love talking to you about their own experiences about when they were your age? I was born a bit too late. By the time I was born, my grandfather had passed away. So all the stories that I'd heard were by my grandmother. But I was too young to grasp the dynamics of a story back then. Though I remember some of her stories vaguely, I clearly remember some of the stories that my parents told me. And though when I would listen to their stories, I was intrigued and completely mesmerized, and a train of thoughts would grab me, but I could not figure out why. I couldn't figure out what made those stories so interesting. Looking back, I can say that I was an ideal audience back then, decades ago. But now, after learning about filmmaking and storytelling, I might have become more of a critic than an audience. Even though I miss my days as an innocent audience member, I am grateful to be where I am after learning about storytelling. Because now, with all the information I have and the knowledge I've gained, I can actually understand what made those stories connect with me. Best of all, I can replicate what worked for me and avoid all the traps. Now when I look back at all the stories told to me by my parents or my grandmother, I can see a pattern of why they worked. But before we dive deep into that, let me tell you a little story that my father told me long ago. Many years ago, when he was my age, he had a family that was depending on him. And he didn't earn much. So affording basic amenities like taking a bus would be something he couldn't spend his money on, even if he was taking a bus for work. To save money every day, he used to walk to his job and then walk back home after his shift was done. And this walk was 2 hours each way. But he did so every day with a smile on his face. And to kill time, he used to make up ghazals in his mind, which is kind of a music. Days passed, weeks passed, he kept on walking, he kept on thinking of new lyrics for the ghazals, and a year later there was a competition, a ghazal singing competition in which he took part and won the first prize along with a huge sum of money. I'm sorry for butchering the story, Dad, but isn't it beautiful? The point is, why did this story work for me? And the answer is simple and applies to all films, stories, books, novels ever written. Just 4 things: relatability, a problem, stakes, and a meaningful resolution. Now, of course, what's more relatable to me than my father telling me about his own life, right? But in films, that is a bit hard, because in film, you need to tactfully pull the audience to actually care for the protagonist or other characters. You need the audience to identify with the protagonist or at least care for them. The problem was quite simple. My dad could not spend on a bus ticket, and because of that, he had a lot of time to kill. In films, you have conflicts, the problems that your characters face, mainly your protagonist. Stakes. My father had to save money. He couldn't spend on things like taking a bus ticket because he had a family to feed, a family to keep warm, a family to keep under a roof. And hearing about that made the problem appear so close to me and made me care so much about the problem. Similarly, in films, you have stakes where the protagonist cannot go off track. He has to solve the problem. Despite of whatever comes his way, he has to hammer on. A meaningful resolution. A year later, when my father won that ghazal competition, all that time he had spent walking, saving the money for the bus ticket, thinking of lyrics for the ghazal, actually paid off. And it all made sense. It came full circle, didn't it? In films too, we as an audience member yearn for a positive or at least a meaningful resolution for a protagonist that we care so much for. The hero we have invested so much in, cared so much for, seen go through so many things in the film, we want to finally see him win in the end. Doesn't matter if it's an underdog or not, it's a person we care for, right? That's all, friends. Just look back at all the stories you've ever heard, maybe from your childhood, and you will see this pattern in each and every story that you connect with. I promise you. And after that, watch a film that you have loved and you'll see the same pattern in that. And if you don't, then personally email me and we'll talk about it. And I'll explain to you how these elements were carefully hidden by the screenwriters. Read a little, watch a little, live a little, pull your shoulders back, keep your chin up and smile, because in the end, it's always about a story.